Welcome back to the channel and podcast Break from Fear with Teri Pickens. This is a podcast where an education is given that within our world we can see the symptoms of fear, but we're not aware that it's because people are living in survival mode. And once again, 20 years ago, I had a download, and the gist of the knowledge is that children need better protection from their fears because while they're primal or instinctual, they see fear a lot differently from you do as an adult or after they have reasoning. So parents or guardians must protect them until that point of reasoning. Otherwise, the more they're exposed on an ongoing basis to any form of fear, where in their mind they make it more real than it is, their sympathetic nervous system can go on and stay on permanently. Of course, if that happens, then they're living in survival mode. And so today, one symptom of survival mode is ADHD, and that's what we'll be talking about today. Just another reminder that your goal is to get out of survival mode, and if you look at all the other videos on this channel, each one help you to see that when the child goes into fear, the reason they fear is the thing they fear is somewhat embedded in what I have called a minefield. Now, the minefield, of course, is emotional and psychological, and for any child, or even it happens in the case of adults, it is a place where emotionally there are dangers. That very fear that we didn't protect the children from is embedded in that minefield. And it could be, I think last video, we looked at a movie clip of the little girl going home. And in this case, it was corporal punishment. But it could be anything. It could be an innocent child sitting watching movies because parents are not available and watching a movie that's R-rated or PG or just at a rating that's way above their reasoning or understanding will create this emotional minefield, which is repetitive every time they encounter certain things from that energy field, and then they go into the sympathetic system. Today, however, I would like to look at one symptom of survival mode, ADHD. And before I continue, and as always, if you stay until the end, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so I can bring you more. And if you stay to the end, then I will give you some live examples of ADHD, people with ADHD. But before going there, I would like to look at some statistics on ADHD. While around 6% of U.S. adults have this ADHD, a large portion remains completely undiagnosed, with some studies showing up to 10 to 25% of adults with ADHD getting a proper diagnosis, and recent surveys finding up to 25% of adults suspect that they have it, even though a few of them will ever see a doctor. A new small study reveals 14% adults may be underdiagnosed. And women seem more affected, which highlights a significant gap between prevalence and diagnosis. So here are some key statistics and findings. Under prevalence, roughly 6% of adults have ADHD, but less than 20% gets treatment. suspected ADHD. A 2024 survey found 25% of American adults suspect they have undiagnosed ADHD, but only 13% discussed it with a doctor. The gap in diagnosing. Some research indicates that only 10 to 25% of adults with ADHD receive an accurate diagnosis and treatment. The undiagnosed women. Why? Well, women are often underdiagnosed due to more internalizing, and part of it is inattentiveness, the ADD symptoms that we talked about, which is different from the typical male presentation. Recent study. A small study from early 2025 estimated around 14% of adults might be undiagnosed. Why is this gap? And even in these studies, let me remind you that no matter where the studies come from, and I'll leave links below that you can follow these studies, the question for you to ask anyone given a study or research is, why do people have ADHD? And that would be the one question that they cannot answer. But to continue with the statistic, there is something called masking. Adults may cope with symptoms, making them less obvious, so they're masking it. Overlapping conditions. ADHD symptoms mimic many other symptoms, anxiety, depression, and other issues complicating diagnosis. The social media impact. Increase online awareness, like TikTok, Facebook, raises suspicion for most people, but also leads to potential self-diagnosis without professional confirmation. Why then do you think people would self-diagnose? One of the symptoms of living in survival mode is a lack of trust. So people would rather self-diagnose for two reasons. One is fear that they would go to a professional and may not like the news they hear. And two has to do with survival mode, because each person is equipped to survive a death situation. Trust is turned off at the moment. How about the importance of diagnosis? Well, an accurate diagnosis is crucial for assessing proper support and treatment, and preventing self-blame and improving your life outcome. Self-diagnosis can lead to incorrect treatment, as ADHD symptoms overlap with many other conditions, as most experts know if and when you see them. So undiagnosed, it puts you at risk, but as I said, you're living in survival mode where you're under chronic stress, your attention is scattered, your attention is fragmented, and your nervous system, that sympathetic system, is locked in the stress. And it's not a place to live, as we talked in other videos. The nervous system has the two parts. The sympathetic is where you're under attack. You need to survive. It should be a moment in time, not a lifetime. Thus, if you live in it a lifetime, you have chronic stress. The parasympathetic, the other half of the nervous system, is where we need to live and breathe and feed on a day-to-day basis. But this is where something called the vagus nerve is. And people have learned just to stroke that nerve to calm themselves rather than realize that this is the place they should live and calm should be more the norm. Well, those are the statistics. Let me also explain the difference between ADD and ADHD. ADD, the busyness is in your head. No one can see it physically, but if you observe carefully, you can become aware of it. Your attention is scattered. So if you're a business person and you're working with clients, they do not have your full attention because you're multitasking. And needless to say, a reminder that the brain can only do one thing at a time. So it's a myth that you're getting anything done when you're multitasking. An example of that would be when you're multitasking, what you're doing to your client would be the equivalent of what you do to your spouse. If let's say it's your anniversary and you took your spouse out to dinner, but while you're engaging in conversation, you're on your phone. Your attention is scattered. It's insulting. It's rude. And that person, whether it's a business client or your spouse, would notice and would not want to be a part of that environment. ADHD is the ADD, the attention deficit, but now you add the motor to it. It's kind of comparable to driving a car. It may be the most beautiful car, but the motor is the part that makes it move, that gives it action. ADHD, the hyperactivity, is the component that gives movement to ADD. So it's that urgency where you can't sit still, you're constantly on the move. Even in the case of illness, people with ADHD find it difficult to go to bed for a week or a few days or a couple hours because there's that sense that you have to constantly be moving. And the Bible even speaks of that in 2 Timothy. It says we're running when no one is chasing us. So it's that sensation, but that makes sense if you're in survival mode. The sensation in your head is that something is about to happen. Something is wrong. Someone is chasing you. There's something you have to get away from, but without you being conscious that that's just a figment of your imagination and it's really not true and that you can stop. So with so many people undiagnosed, it impacts the world that we live in. You're doing business, and as I promised a few examples, I know a young businessman who's very, very talented, but he's also very scattered. I don't know if he's diagnosed ADHD, but because I'm in the field of psychotherapy, I can go ahead and tell you he's definitely ADHD. You could give him 2 words, and if he grabs 1 letter from it, you're lucky, which is a negative because when you're working together, you're constantly repeating yourself and repeating commands. Why? Because he didn't take that first minute to digest what you said. And the negative part of this ADHD, when you're in survival mode, it impacts your emotion. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's stay with the business example I'm giving you. People in that hyperactivity, attention deficit mode tend to overdo. So the emotional result is that you get frustrated. A lot of time you get angry, even at your clients or your students or your family. And that's not always a physical anger. It's more you become passive aggressive. Now, passive aggression can be seen. If someone is passive aggressive in their frustration, anger, you can hear it in their tonality. You can see it in their face if you're looking at them. But what if it's just you're texting or you're exchanging emails? Yes, yes, yes. It comes across very clearly in any message, whether it's an email or a text message. And so if it's business, how are you going to keep your clients? Because your client is paying you, and it should not be subjected to your emotion. Business is not emotion. There's a time and place for everything. Now, just to give a good solution for that situation, if you, the listener, if you're listening to this video and this is your situation, you have to have order. Remember, I did a video called Lawlessness. With lawlessness, what I've just described with this business person is lawlessness. He has to have order. And order would look something like have set working hours. Let's say it's 9 to 5. Stop chasing money, because if you're chasing money, if a client calls after 5, you may not realize that you should take a break, and they may not realize that your hours are 9 to 5. So let them leave a message. Don't answer the phone and then be angry at them. When you're resting or you're at your own leisure, don't answer the phone. Start working within your own 9 to 5, because without order or rules, you're only going to have chaos in your business. And even if it's a personal situation, a marriage, any kind of relationship, you have kids, families, you will have chaos because you don't have rules. And as I said, without rules or discipline, it must result in chaos. The other thing I want to quickly touch on before we end is the trust issue when you're living in survival mode. That lack of trust has to do with, if there's a gun at my head, I don't have time to trust. The only person I can trust is myself. So that manifests from that childhood fear into not trusting. And so you don't trust going to the doctor and being diagnosed. So many people, and I'm sure you all know some, start Googling symptoms that they have, and some even want to go to their doctor and argue that this is what's wrong. And then lots of them go out and buy pills and diagnose themselves. This is very dangerous, because this will impact. You are running now, but there comes a time. All of this is cumulative. Once again, a reminder, your system, your nervous system, is under chronic stress. It's locked in the stress, and it's going to impact every aspect of your life. But specifically, because your body is locked in stress, it will impact your health in a physical way. Strange illnesses, aches and pain that you can't put a finger on, breathing, blood pressure, I could go on and on. And it's all cumulative. So as you get older, all of this gets worse. And we've seen so many young people are dying younger and younger, and there seem to be no proper symptoms or diagnosis for why they die. So once again, as I am about to end the video and our chat for today, your goal must be to get out of survival mode. If you have children, your goal is to watch them, put them under your shirt, keep them safe from any and constant, not just any, but it's the constant exposure to any kind of fear that will turn on that sympathetic fight-flight system and keeps it on. I will end the video now, but we will continue to look at all these symptoms of survival mode and remind you that your goal your goal for yourself or for anyone you love and care for is to get out of survival mode. Until next time, we'll see you then. Don't forget to like, subscribe, make comments, and I will answer each and every one of you and bring you more material on this.